Hey everybody, how are we going tonight? You may notice we're actually live tonight, one, for start with, and two, this isn't Natty.
I know it's a big shocker.
I know, but we're joined tonight by Mercury Casts, who, if you're in our Discord, you know him from there. But he also does a lot of casting work as well. So we thought for an introduction to getting to know you, because some people might not know you, just talk a little bit about what you do in your casting role and what games you're actually involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mainly am a play-by-play commentator for Valorant and League of Legends. Actual plays, TTRPG, all that kind of stuff. Voiceover, if it's to do with my voice, that's sort of my jam. But pleasure to be here.
Yeah, that's good. Glad to have you here. And we were talking a little bit earlier because I remember last year I did an interview with Rusty from the LCO casting desk, and we were talking about the journey that they have with casting. And I've seen a few things, because there was a big thing that kind of came up to the end of last year with the Ivory Tower, which was a little bit ridiculous because anything that you're going into, whether it be an organisation, they're always going to have somebody up the top, and just talking about how it's very, like casting in particular, is very Sydney centric.
Oh, yeah.
And really it is. And we found that with the weekly show that we do here at Goa, in-person stuff is so much better than online stuff. You cannot beat that chemistry where you bounce off each other. But it does mean that for someone like yourself that's in Perth, or even someone that's in Melbourne, it does get quite hard if you're not in Sydney. So how have you found that with your casting?
It's definitely limited a fair few opportunities, to say the least. Mainly that one last year that sort of sparked a lot of talk about the Ivory Tower. I applied for that one, but it was only Sydney based. But it is very difficult. It's a flooded industry when you really think about it. Like there's max maybe 3 commentators per broadcast, and maybe there's a few different language broadcasts, but there's only so many casters and even less spots. And so it makes it very, very difficult to actually get consistent gigs, because that's the thing. Like if you want to get consistent, livable gigs to do it full time, I mean, you have to be either in Sydney or in America or Europe. Even in Europe, you have to be in Germany pretty much, or, or the UK. Those are where mainly the broadcast centres are. But yeah, it's pretty difficult, to say the very least. And you've definitely seen a fair few casters in recent times that have steered away from doing predominantly oceanic casts and have done ones in North America. They've taken the penalty of being on a completely different time zone to actually do this somewhat for a living and get paid and casting the top teams and getting their name out there.
Yeah, I've seen that a bit, because I've spoken to Blue Panther and Cthulhu, who are both involved with the ANZPL, which Goa is a big supporter of since it started. And talking to those guys, and they're both in New Zealand, but they get up at crazy o'clock in the morning to cast some American event for COD or for Halo or something, just because that's what you've got to do to be able to survive as a caster.
Yeah, it is pretty difficult. I've definitely had a few American gigs where I've had to wake up at 3 a.m. I had one early 2021 that was really, like, I had sporadic off and on throughout the morning. There was like a 2-hour gap between some of the series. So I'm like, I'm just gonna have a quick power nap on the couch right next to me, and then set an alarm right next to my ear to wake up just in time for it.
Yeah, but that's crazy. The split shifts are the worst.
Oh yeah, it's very difficult.
Yeah. Well, glad to have you here tonight, because like, some games that I don't know very well, and we'll be talking a bit about Locked In with Valorant a bit later, as well as the Perth Pokemon Regional Championships that happened here over the weekend that you were able to attend. We'll also have a bit of ANZPL news, because just tonight, literally before we started streaming, the ANZPL draft happened for Split 1 2023. And of course, we've got LCO news. So, let's jump into it, eh?
Yeah.
So let's first have a chat about the ANZPL World of Tanks. I'm so happy. I love this as an esport, because it's just some esports you look at, like Dota and LoL, are probably the ones you look at and you go, they're super complex to learn. And while
that's fair.
while World of Tanks has its complexities and you got to know where to shoot and angles of depression on guns and stuff like that, I feel at its core it is tanks shooting other tanks. So it's pretty simple to watch. And the 5v5 format that they have, which differs to the main game, if you've ever played it, if you go into a normal pug game, it's 15v15.
Far out.
So the 5v5 format gets a lot more strategic in how they use the maps and what tanks they bring in. But it was very exciting to see some of the draft and some of the players that came in. I'd like to start first by just talking about the teams, because unfortunately it looks like the Cairns Comets have dropped off for this season. So they were actually quite surprising, because they were building towards, they've got a B League as well, and they were building towards those teams being able to be promoted into the Premier League. And Comets were the first team to come up and do that. And they finished fourth, which got them into playoffs, which was a huge thing for that, because there has been a bit of a perceived skill gap between the Premier League and the B League, but the Comets just proved that they had it, that B League teams could match with what the Premier League were doing. Wow. Unfortunately, they have not returned this season, but instead we've got, I think they're the Wollongong Wolverines these days, with a few old PL players and some B League players coming up as well. So I'm excited to see what they can do. Returning champions, the Sentinels. So North Sydney Sentinels, they've won like 5 of the 6 championships. Yeah, they're pretty dominant. Their lineup doesn't change very often. So we're looking at a. You know what? Actually, let's show you guys the screen as well, so you can see what's going on there. So the teams in bold are existing players for the team that are returning. And the ones not in bold are the ones that were drafted tonight. So quite excited to see Rowendi on Adelaide Action X. They're coming back into the groove as well, because he's been on the Sentinels list for a while, but the Sentinels core roster has just been so strong that he hasn't been able to get a game. So him moving over to the Action X, I think that happened in a trade, because Speed, that's in the Sentinels, was on Action X last season. So Speed's actually come back to the Sentinels as well. Action X picked up Lightning Man, who took a year off from the Perth Panthers. Okay. He's returned, so he's quite a good light tank player with his scouting abilities. And Ravi from the old Brisbane Bulldogs, who folded a couple of seasons ago. So exciting to see them back. Matildas have picked up, Matildas last season had a good roster on paper, but just couldn't quite get there. So, although I am, and this is a name excitement thing, because Bolognese is one of their main players, and he's still hanging around. But I noticed one of the players that they've recruited is called Ravioli al dente. So I think ravioli al dente with bolognese, I think that could go very well. So we'll have and a couple of really good B League players in there, Magic Shells and Spencer 2018 as well coming in. So that's going to be very exciting. Now, Panthers, being a Perth person, I am very excited by this lineup. They've managed to keep most of theirs together. Last season they picked up Bales and Madhouse, 2 very good players. Bales used to be at the Matildas a couple of seasons ago, had a bit of a break. Madhouse from the Brisbane Bulldogs. So they didn't quite fire last season, but this season I'm very excited to see how they go, and especially with picking up Critical, and I've forgotten which team he's come from. But he's a very good player in his own right. So having him on the bench for the 5v5 format is going to be amazing. Sentinels, they've only changed. Well, they've picked up Speed in a trade for Rowendi with the Action X, and also picked up Safi in the draft. Safi's another really good player that's come from the B League, so excited to see that. The Scorpions, forever the bridesmaid, never the bride at the moment. They've played the Sentinels in like 3 of the championships and lost every time, but they've got a really good lineup that they don't like to change, and it works for them, because they them and the Sentinels are definitely the two best teams in the league. So very exciting to see them keeping their seven roster together there. And then the Wolverines as well, Sir Robin and Toddy coming up from the B League with that team, and also recruiting Mudguard Saxon, who was also a former Matildas captain. He actually he didn't. He was the captain of the Matildas when they won the Season 2 Grand Final, but he was getting married that weekend, so he couldn't play. So
What a time.
I know. His missus let him watch the game at the
venue?
at the venue,
Oh,
I
wow.
think. But yeah, that was a bit unfortunate. But AVP, Soltarian, and Flaming rounding up that lineup. I'm hoping that they have a good showing, just like the Comets did last season. So quite exciting. That's all the teams ready to go for ANZPL 2023 Split 1. That is kicking off on the 31st of March. So cannot wait to see that. And the B League will be kicking off the Monday after that. So I think that's the 2nd of April, something like that. So yeah, very exciting to see. Cannot wait.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's get on to our next little bit. And I'm actually really excited to talk about this because I feel like this is the first week of the LCO where there really hasn't been drama.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first few matches, right? Direwolves losing to PGG, Chiefs beating Bliss, Direwolves stomping Mammoth. These are expected games. But then yesterday, you just throw all of that out the window. We see Team Bliss 2-0ing Chiefs, the former champions from last split, and then Direwolves taking down a really shaky Pentanet.
I must admit, I didn't see the games last night because I was here doing the weekly show, so I didn't get to watch that. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised to see not surprised to see the Direwolves come out on top because their lineup, I feel like, I think most people going in were talking about Pentanet and Chiefs, and probably even the Peace lineup coming into. Well, we'll talk about Peace a little bit because I don't think we cannot talk about Peace.
Yeah.
But I think those were the three lineups that people were talking about. But Direwolves were kind of the dark horse, and when they ended up finishing on top in the group stages, I feel like they're still a threat. And,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and getting like Decoy, Praedyth, and Chaz back together on that lineup. If they could have picked up Biopanther from the Chiefs, that would have just been
Insult to
dream.
injury.
Oh, I know. But Pabu's never coming back. He's happy in Germany. Well, he just got married recently, I saw.
Yeah.
But look, those three, and then they're going to kill me because I always focus on those three, and I can't remember the other
Poltron?
two. Poltron
Zoranus?
and Zoranus, yeah, and they're no slouches in their own right.
yeah.
So they've got a very formidable lineup there. So, I actually think I'm a little bit glad to see them take games off Pentanet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, prior to last night's games, they were 0-3 against Pentanet. The split, they lost their only game of the split to them in the regular season, and then a pretty decisive 2-0 on Monday. And, coming into this, Game 2 was the exception. Game 2 was absolute domination from Pentanet, and it's what we sort of expected coming into the series. But Games 1 and 3, something was off. Their drafting has been a bit disappointing, to say the very least. There have been communication issues during fights, and it's really, don't get me wrong, Violet is still Violet. He's still popping off. He, even in those losses, was trying so hard to carry the games, but it just wasn't enough. And honestly, I think it is Schönfire's Lee Sin that is to blame for a majority of the loss situation last night.
So I know, Schönfire is a returning player. I'm not actually sure because my entry into esports has only been the last couple of years. Pretty much, I didn't watch the OPL. I came on as the LCO was starting, so I don't really know a lot of history about Schönfire. But from what I've seen of him playing, he dives a lot, and I'm not sure whether he doesn't tell people he's going to dive and just doesn't get support from his team because he's not telling them or what. And yeah, there's a couple of times, even in the 2-0 win that they had against Direwolves on Monday night, there were a couple of times there where he dove where he probably didn't need to and died for it. So I'm not sure if that's a characteristic of his game, if he's just that aggressive or what. Yeah.
He is, I mean, for those people who don't know, Schönfire was on the Direwolves roster that won 4 back-to-back titles. I'm not exactly sure how many splits he played. But one of the World Championships, he was temporarily banned
Oh.
for being racist, for making a racist remark in solo queue.
Oh, wow.
And Ubisoft took his place for some of those games, who you might recognize from Pentnet. The Meme King, he was their substitute coach at MSI.
What a job he did that.
Oh,
it
yeah.
was so good.
Absolutely incredible. Helped really build Pentnet's brand at that event. But took a bit of a break from Oceania. Was playing in North America before Direwolves. Played on probably one of the most dominant eras that we've ever seen from Direwolves. It was 4 back-to-back titles in 2016 and 2017. Went over to America and was quietly tearing up like the academy circuit. Was making a bit of a name for himself. Returned back here. I believe there was an interview with Snowball the other day with Schoenfire on why he returned home. I haven't read it yet, but I'm probably going to read it tonight. But yeah, very, very aggressive, and we're very lucky that Chippies is there to sort of rein him in a bit and be that veteran presence, because they were on that Direwolves roster together.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, if you can bring... Like, that aggression is great for when you need it, but having someone that can rein them in that they're going to listen to as well is a big thing. And yeah, one that we haven't really talked about yet is the Chiefs and Bliss. Now, I've been really excited by this Team Bliss lineup. Like, I'm a big fan of Lived. I love his top laning efforts there. And I spoke to, I think he's Bliss's coach, but when he was with Kanga last year, Calvin, I think is his name. Spoke to him in an interview last year, and just the excitement around Kanga then with them, and Benji was, I think, involved with Kanga as well. And now those three at least have come across to Team Bliss, and we're seeing some really good results. And I'm very excited that they were actually able to beat Chiefs. Like the fact that they took a game off Chiefs on Monday night was amazing. I love that, and to see them beat Chiefs in the what do they call them, the ranking games, I guess, for the next stage last night as well. That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and of course the elephant in the room. Why not in the jungle? He is the Meme King of Oceania.
I love to see him dance.
Oh yeah, absolutely incredible. This is his first like actual split playing fully. I'm pretty sure he only played 2 games of regular season before that. But I mean, it's hard not to talk about Chiefs, right? This roster is stacked with pedigree and talent. You've got Biopanther top. You know, you've got Babip. You've got Kisei rather. You've got Raze and Aladaric. These are all players who have been internationally multiple times, right? Like, people forget Babip, Tally, and Raze were on that legacy roster. Tally and Babip were on Peace when they went to Worlds, and so was Aladaric.
Yeah. And even like this is the roster that went to Worlds last year, and yes, that wasn't the best run. We won't talk too much about that. But the only difference is that there's no Tally, but you have Babip, who was there as their coach. So it's got all this experience, and after only dropping 1 game in Split 2 last season, I don't know if this new format has kind of made them take a back seat a little bit and not be so concerned, because they worked out they could win enough games to get through to the playoffs, and then they're going to switch it on. I kind of get the feeling about a lot of teams in there. You know, well, Pentnet in particular as well. And although you know, I know they've been scrimming against a lot of the Southeast Asian teams, so maybe they're trying to hold some of those strats in reserve for the playoffs to make sure that they get through to just the final 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Chiefs, they've got Kisei in the mid lane now, which is at least a side grade from Tally. He's been lauded for many years as one of our best mid laners. Had some pop-off moments, but Daystar was demolishing him in the mid lane last series. You know, the versatility of people like Benvi playing the Annie support, and how comfortable and silently dominant Limas was on the Virus in both games last night. It is a scary look coming in towards the top 4, and you know, it's going to be interesting to see what Chiefs does, because they finished 4th in the regular season. They didn't do as well as people expected. People expected them to be at the top, not Direwolves.
Yeah. I also think, though, like, there was no real incentive for placement after the round robin stage, because every team was going through, and that was. This is the part where we're going to talk about Peace, by the way, because it was almost a joke that Peace could forfeit 5 of the 7 games, still get through to the group stage, and look like that they had a good enough team to get through to the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would have loved to see more from that Peace roster, and Europe has the same format, but they have 10 teams, so only the top 8 progress.
Yeah.
So last split we saw Fnatic and I believe Astralis bombing out, and they weren't able to make it to the next stage of competition. But where we only have 8 teams, it begs the question, should maybe only the top 6 go? Should there be like a last chance qualifier maybe for the bottom 4?
Yeah, well, I think that's probably a better way of doing it, because if you've got a season that's, I don't know, let's call it 12 weeks long, just for it, and after the first 2 or 3 weeks, you say goodbye to 2 teams. There's still a fair chunk that those teams aren't going to be able to play. So I don't think getting rid of the bottom 2 is the thing to do. But I think if you split it into top 4 and bottom 4, and the top 4 play in their group stages, bottom 4 play in their group stages, then you say goodbye to 2 teams from the bottom stage, and the 2 top teams from the bottom 4 play the bottom 2 from the top 4. And I think that's. It might not be what other regions are doing, but I think for our 6-team region, that's the best way to do it, and still give the lower teams chances to play and get better as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to touch on your point before about Pentanet holding in some of their drafts, they have run this experiment this year. They've taken the 60 ping disadvantage of all of their stage games. They've stopped scrimming Chiefs. I mean, they didn't last year, but it's brought up a bit of rivalry on Twitter, particularly between Raze, who is probably a bit too hot-headed sometimes in the conversations with Chippies on Twitter. But they've taken that disadvantage, and they're scrimming Southeast Asian teams, they're scrimming Vietnamese teams, and it's really the experiment of, is this going to play off? Because they need to make top 4 in order for it to actually, matter and be worth that investment.
That's it, and we are seeing that at the moment as well. So with the games this week, the playoff bracket has been decided. So I believe Monday night these are starting. So Direwolves will take on Chiefs in the first upper bracket final before Bliss takes on Pentanet in the second one. The losers will go down to the lower bracket and play there. The winners will go through to the upper bracket final, and so on and so forth till we get to our grand final. So it's going to be exciting times, I think, getting into this playoff bracket. The only thing that I don't like is how much of a gap we're getting between some stages. Like, I fully expected to have another 2 or 3 week break between the end of the group stage and the beginning of playoff stage.
Yeah.
And probably that is because they had that 2 week break between the round robin and the group stages. And yeah, it's been a little bit fun. I know they've had to play it a little bit by ear because of losing the direct entry into MSI and Worlds and having to go through the Pacific Championship. Yeah, just Championship. And that's going to add an extra layer of difficulty onto it. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting as well, because during the week they announced. It was last week they announced they were going to do something in DreamHack, but this week they announced what that was. Yeah. And I'm kind of glad that they did, because it gave some
context.
I think context, and as well some background into the issues I think that the LCO and ESL are dealing with when it comes to Riot and our entry. Because now what is going to be happening at DreamHack is very much dependent on what happens in the PCS. So our top 2 teams will go through to the PCS and they'll play there for a spot in MSI. If one of our teams does make it through to the finals, the grand final for the LCO will not be at DreamHack.
Yep.
But if they don't, then the grand final will be there. There will be an exhibition match of sorts, so LCO will still be there, but it's just... I just find it very interesting that we may have a team going to MSI before we have an LCO champion for Split 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's it's difficult. It's a difficult situation for ESL, right? Because they've also got IEM qualifiers and all that kind of stuff that we saw at DreamHack last year. It's not just League that's at this. There's Halo as well. There's, I believe, World of Tanks was around that time.
Yeah, World of Tanks, their grand final, I think, is the end of May, and they're aiming for Fortress Sydney.
Okay.
So they won't be a DreamHack, but yeah, there's definitely a few sort of split ones that are wrapping up around then.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does suck, right, because we don't get that instant qualification, but also the timings are a bit off, right, anyway, because the event is the end of April. MSI starts, I believe, the 5th of May. You know, that is nowhere near enough time to get visas ready, to travel there, to begin practicing, to wear off the jet lag. And it's very much a thing of how much are they sort of stripping from our region, even more so every year by year.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, I will say this about like it's hard as a smaller region. We see what gets taken away from us. We got the OPL and the right support for that taken away from us. Now we're getting our direct entry into the international events taken away from us. But in fairness, other than Pentanet, our teams have not had success at international events.
I would argue maybe Peace when they attended. They made it further than any other team. Really, in terms of games won, they were one BO5 away from the group stage, and unfortunately, it was up against Cloud9, which also has fudge in it. So, you know, Aussies versus Aussies, it's hard to go against that, but. Yeah, it is.
Oh no,
it is
it's not. You go for the OCE team.
Oh yeah.
Like, and when they get beaten, then you go for the team that's got the Aussies in it. Yeah.
True. But it is, it is a difficult situation because, let's be honest, last year was a bit of a disappointment, right? Winless throughout MSI and World.
For a team that only dropped one in a local split. And like I can see the experimentation that Pentanet are trying to do with scrimming the Southeast Asian team. So I'm hoping that does pay off for them and they at least perform well at PCS, sorry. Yeah. But getting back to sort of the point I was trying to make was that I can see why Riot are doing this because we are not good enough for the international. Yeah. It's a harsh thing to say, but we are most definitely not good enough at that level.
Yeah.
And the problem is that you don't get that experience without going there. But if you only go there and you play 3-4 matches, maybe 6 matches in your group stage, and then you're on the plane back home, does that really count as experience?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and we saw Chiefs last year, according to like rumors from most of the teams, they were demolishing every other team in scrims. You know, like
we all know scrims don't count, eh?
Fair, but like it is a difficult scenario to see, and it isn't just us that are getting our immediate seed stripped away as well. I know that Turkey is as well, and I think Vietnam has to go through the PCS playoffs. I could be wrong on that regard, but there are a few of the minor regions that do get that. However, we are in, out of all of those regions, a unique situation because besides from Pentanet, we do not have the technological capability to scrim other regions, right? Japan can scrim against China and Korea. You know, America has South American teams. Europe has like 50 different regional leagues, and Middle East, North Africa, and Turkey and Russia. It's a difficult situation just because of our geography. Yeah. And
you know what, I always remember at PAX last year, there was an esports at the Olympics panel, and I'll never forget, Stephen Cornish from Pentanet was on there. And he's the CEO of Pentanet, the internet company who owns Pentanet.gg. And he worked it into the conversation every which way he could. You know, we should just set up an esports center here and then we can scrim against Southeast Asia.
And I mean, that's what they're doing. And if it pays off and we see success internationally from this Pentanet roster, I'm a bit biased because I'm from Perth, but it is likely that we see other teams, maybe not Chiefs because they have a pretty established
they've got their game in-house already, yeah.
But potentially other teams making the move over to WA and using the technology that we have to reliably scrim Southeast Asian teams, and maybe one day we get the league here. It's a big ask.
I mean, no, well, it's not if you get a few teams here.
Absolutely.
It's not unforeseeable that happens, but it is, you've got to convince teams to come over here and scrim first
Yeah.
and do all that sort of stuff. So it is a little bit of a hard sell, but doable.
Yeah, and it's all about long-term payoff. And as we know from Order, teams are not exactly printing money.
Oh no, they are
To say the very
most definitely not. But I mean, well, that could be another thing. Rather than a Sydney-based team come here, where rent was cheaper than Sydney. I don't know what it's like now, but cost of living a little bit cheaper. Come on, teams, let's go. Come on, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we've had a bit of a gab about LCO for a long enough time now. Let's move on to another couple of bits that we got here. The Pokemon Perth Regional Championships.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the second part of the Oceanic Circuit after the International Championships, which was in Melbourne in February, I believe. We had players from all around the world, including the winner of the event, who was from the UK, Tehran, I believe his name is. An incredible event. I've never been to a regional qualifier before, but these players are using their teams to compete and try and earn championship points to qualify for the World Championship in Yokohama, Japan in August.
Oh, right. So it's a points-based thing. So it wasn't a you win, you go through to this.
Yeah, it's I believe top 32 gets 60 points, and then it's an increasing amount until 200 for first place. And I believe for Oceanic players, 200 is all you need to get an invite. So if you win a regional, you've pretty much guaranteed your spot. There are a number of people who had been to the European qualifiers or the North American qualifiers early on, who flew back over here or vice versa to get enough points to qualify.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I was just looking at some of the results for the VCG, because there were 3 different tournaments going on. The VCG, which I'm guessing is a video game championship in Scarlet and Violet. There was Pokemon Go Championship and also the TCG Championship. And I'm just looking at some of the results here, and it so happens, it looks like, my eyes aren't quite good, but that does look like a UK flag. Taryn Birdie from the UK took that first spot out for the VCG, took home the $2,000 US first prize and the $200 championship, 200 championship points as well. So
yeah, I believe Europeans have to get 350 because there's a lot more events, but
still 200 for 350.
Yeah,
still,
exactly. Yeah,
but it's also very exciting looking at the flags from the rest of them down to 8th, all Australian flags.
Yeah, we had a few Perth players in the top cut as well, and that was pretty interesting to see. A lot of different metagames sort of evolving, but it's sort of a matter of will that get thrown out the window, because next events are going to be played on Series 3, which will include some of the legendary Pokemon from this event. So it's going to be interesting to see how the meta adapts and evolves as a result of that.
Well, that would be very very interesting, and it's one thing that video games have over a lot of other things is that a patch comes out and all of a sudden the meta changes, and you've got to work out what you're doing with that. I'm just going to quickly see if I can find the results of the other regionals for the TCG and the.
There you go.
Well, that's the TCG.
Oh,
there's just the rankings. It's not gonna.
Yeah, they're not covered as much, Go and TCG, but I believe that I believe that they are on there. I could be wrong because I saw them briefly before, but yeah, it was very interesting to see. I've never been to a regional like that, and it blew me away. It's a completely different atmosphere to something like LCO at DreamHack or CS:GO at DreamHack. It's this sort of collaborative, you're all sitting around watching this one guy switch in the finals from a distance because there's no TV, and you're clapping along as he wins with a miraculous read. It's an incredible experience. I believe that's the only Perth one this year. However, there is a Sydney one in a few weeks, and the European International Championship, I believe, is mid-April. So you should be able to check that out. I'm pretty sure that's being live streamed over the course of the event. So I'm pretty sure the official Pokemon channel on YouTube will have the live streams of that.
Yeah, I've just noticed on the Wikipedia page I'm looking at, it's got tabs for all the different ones. So I should have been looking into that to start with.
Oh, no.
Unfortunately, I can't read out the full name because it just so happens that this TV that we got in front of us has a nice big...
Avrip, there we go.
yeah, nice big strip down the middle of it missing. But yes, Avrip won the Pokemon Go regional qualifier, goes through to the World Championships, and so did Rob Drogo. So he also gets entry to the World Championship. So well done to both of those. And let's just have a quick look at the TCG as well.
So yeah, the TCG and the Pokemon Go's finished up on the first day because of the nature of how quick those games tend to be. So day 2 was pretty much only VGC in the top 8 of that, which was very interesting to see. Yeah, we had an Indonesian top 2.
Yeah, so there were three categories: Masters, Seniors, Juniors. So in Masters, Derek Dow won, Australian. Love to see it. And Joko Wong from Indonesia came second as well there. In the Seniors grouping...
Oh, it doesn't look like there's a page.
Oh, there is not a page. Oh my. That's okay. So there was a Seniors and there was a Juniors. They probably don't report on the Juniors as well. And probably I'm thinking that those the Masters are probably more the ones that will get reported on because they'll get specific stuff and they're probably already on the circuit.
Yeah.
Segue here. So last week we announced on the weekly show that Game on Oz has a Patreon page, which if you're in the Twitch chat at the moment or watching live on twitch.tv/GameOnOz, you can do !support in chat to see the Patreon link. All the tiers that we've got, if you sign up, you go into a monthly prize draw. And our monthly prize for this month is this box of Crown Zenith Elite Trainer Box Pokemon cards.
I'll take it.
I think you got to sign up to be a Patreon first. So you can do that through our Patreon link. You can find, like I said, you can find it. It'll probably be in the description of this video if you're watching on YouTube or on Anchor or wherever you're listening to the podcast as well. But yeah, so you can win that and maybe go and play in a tournament, a regional next time it comes around.
Yeah.
So the last story for tonight, and I must admit I was sort of peripherally aware of this one, but didn't really pay attention to it, mainly because I don't know Valorant all that well. But Valorant Locked-In happened recently.
Yeah, so essentially Lock-In was a 32-team tournament. Every European, Pacific, and American partnered team in their official franchise leagues, as well as 2 teams from China, I believe Edward Gaming and I forget the second one, and that's killing me that I forgot. But it should show it in the teams above there. If you scroll up a little bit more. FPX, yes, that's it. They all competed in a single elimination bracket that ended on Sunday morning for us with an
Stupid
incredible...
o'clock in the morning, I'm guessing.
Yeah, shout out to Conky and Komodo. They were doing an Aussie broadcast from midnight onwards. Shout out to them for that. But yeah, it ended with an incredible series, probably the best that we've ever seen. Loud losing 2-3 to Fnatic in that final series. Fnatic, the runner-up of the first ever Valorant LAN, which was Masters Reykjavik back in 2021, where they lost 2 Sentinels. And the remaining core of Boaster, the king himself, Durka, and their coach Mini from that roster have sort of fell off a fair amount before this event. They went undefeated, 9-0 before the finals. They were up 2 games. They almost won the entire tournament undefeated, and then Loud forced it back to game 5, almost reverse swept them in front of the home crowd.
I can say, I can bet that that Brazilian crowd, like, you only have to see how much support PGG got from the Brazilians, and enough that Decoy went to Brazil for a year to play over there. Yeah. They are amazing fans, and I could just see them getting behind Loud and rallying them.
Oh, absolutely.
You can only imagine what that stadium would have been like if Loud won.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that they were so close as well. The final map was 3-11 in favor of Loud, and then it was miraculously brought back from some incredible plays from the likes of Alpha, who is one of their top players, Turkish guy. I think he's 17 years old.
Oh, Jesus.
And the funny thing is, like, the last event was Champions in Istanbul last year, where the Brazilian team Loud actually won. So now, you know, Brazil took it on Turkish soil, a Turkish person is taking it on Brazilian soil, and it was such an incredible series overall. Loud had 3 of their players from last tournament in Sadak, Aspas, and Les. They were, again, 2 rounds away from being the first ever players to win not only back-to-back, but 2 different international tournaments. But that title was claimed by Fnatic's 5th in Chronicle, who was on Gambit back in 2021 at Masters 3 when they won. So congratulations to Chronicle for taking home that, you know, title, something no one can ever take away from him.
That's exactly right, and congratulations to Fnatic on their win there. And like, it's interesting because like, I'm a big AFL person as well, and admittedly I support the Eagles, and if things aren't going well, the stadium does tend to clear out a little bit earlier. But you were telling me, because this event was in Brazil, when Fnatic were lifting the trophy, there was virtually no one in the stadium.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of an elephant in the room, and people like Tarek, who was at the venue co-streaming the event, sort of pointed out it is quite disappointing behaviour, and it's behaviour that we did see at IEM Rio last year, when there was no Brazilian team in the finals. It was pretty much empty, but I'm okay with like the leaving, especially since apparently it was very hot in the arena. Yeah. Pansy, a shoutcaster, said she almost passed out.
Oh, wow.
From the heat at one point. But there was a lot of booing, even when Fnatic was doing their initial walkout at the start of the thing. But I mean, it happens, and Brazilian fans have been known to be very passionate, to say the least.
I will say, if there's something to boo, I will say go for it. But if it's a team walking out, that's not enough. Yeah. And also, like, it's the grand final. Your team may not have won, but you at least stick around to honour the winners.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, I will say I've never walked out of any sort of sporting event early that I've been to, or esports event, because, you know, mainly because a lot of the time I'm there to support the esport.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think if you're going to be there, you've paid the money to see, you may as well watch the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, before the finals started, the new agent got announced. His name is Gecko.
Is he a little gecko? Like, I'm picturing, like, you're probably a little bit young for this, but on the original PlayStation, there was Gex the Gecko. There was a series of games, and he's like, in the whole cover art was him in a tuxedo, and I'm really, really hoping that this is what this gecko looks like.
He doesn't look like that, unfortunately. He has green hair. He has a bunch of, like, I don't want to call them minions, but like little pets around him that do different things. One of them can cusses nearby enemies. One of them can actually plant the spike and defuse it, but can be killed. And it led to a few times in the show match where the Twitch chat and the casters were booing the people who were shooting the thing, because it's pretty cute.
Save the animals.
Yeah.
Come on, yeah. Although if you're speed running, you kill the animals, so you know.
True.
But that's very exciting. I'm a bit disappointed I missed it now, although also kind of glad that I got to sleep in and not have to stay up late to watch it. But
yeah.
Props to Conky and Komodo for doing that cast there. But exciting to see everything that's going on in the world of esports. Absolutely love it. That's it that we've got for you guys tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Mercury, for coming along and joining in tonight.
It was a pleasure.
I know we only asked you yesterday, so very, very glad that you can make the time. Super excited to see the ANZPL return on the 31st of March, and actually going to keep an eye out for the B-League draft as well, so that'll be happening soon. And of course, LCO next week. Tune in to see the start of the playoffs bracket. Oh, yeah, going to be exciting.
Yeah.
Wonder if Bliss can keep their run going.
I mean, if they can make it all the way to PCS, I mean, what a better
Oh my
story.
God, who would make it with them though? Like,
I want PGG to get there. I'm biased.
yeah.
Perth team, I have to, but I mean, it's
anybody's game, really.
yeah,
Isn't it?
especially
Yeah.
after yesterday. Predictions throw them out all out the window at this point.
Cool. But anyway, thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Nuts and Bolts.